In the distant reaches of the galaxy, Earth had become little more than a forgotten on the cosmic map. Alien civilizations, technologically superior and in control of vast empires, scoffed at Earth's wilderness. To them, Earth's dense jungles were backward, a joke. The Galactic Armies, an alliance of the most advanced military forces in the universe, had conquered planets with towering cities and landscapes shaped by machines. What could a planet like Earth possibly offer? The Galactic Armies had long been dismissive of Earth, with its forests, deserts, and oceans. To them, it was an unworthy place to even set foot. They joked among themselves that humanity was primitive, tied to nature like ancient creatures who had not yet learned the power of technology. Earth's wilderness was their punchline, a symbol of backwardness in a universe of progress. Earth was far from their priorities, seen only as an unimportant ball of dirt circling an average star. But things changed when a new, aggressive alien race, the Krulax, turned their attention toward Earth. They saw potential in the resources hidden beneath Earth's surface, resources that the Galactic Armies had long overlooked. Earth's jungles, untouched by time, held raw materials that could fuel the Krulax war machine. It wasn't long before the Galactic Army's leaders, still mocking Earth's wild terrain, approved the invasion. It would be a swift operation, or so they thought. For the Krulax and their allies, it wasn't just about resources. It was a show of power, a way to remind the galaxy of their superiority. They would storm Earth, take what they wanted, and leave the planet stripped of its valuable resources. To them, Earth was just another conquest in a long list of victories. They believed that their advanced ships, weapons, and combat droids would sweep across the planet without resistance. But they didn't know Earth. They didn't understand the one thing that had kept humanity alive through millennia of hardship, adaptability. Nor did they grasp that Earth's special forces, trained for years in the harshest environments, were more than prepared to defend their home. The Galactic Armies, with all their technology, had never faced anything quite like this. They couldn't fathom the challenge ahead. The first wave of invaders landed in the Amazon, the largest and most impenetrable jungle on the planet. The aliens confidently marched into the thick, humid air, believing their advanced sensors, drones, and hovercrafts would guide them through. But almost immediately, things began to go wrong. The dense foliage played havoc with their technology. Communications went down. Drones got lost, unable to find their way through the jungle canopy. Machines that worked perfectly on other planets faltered in the jungle's heat and moisture. It wasn't long before the alien troops began to realize that Earth's wilderness was far more dangerous than they had anticipated. As they pressed deeper into the jungle, the Galactic Armies found themselves stumbling through thick vines and dense undergrowth. Their hovercrafts became useless, stuck in mud or tangled in branches. The jungle's humidity caused their advanced weapons to malfunction. Their soldiers, who had never trained in environments like this, struggled to move through the terrain. The laughter that had echoed through their ranks when they first landed on Earth began to fade. The humans, on the other hand, were waiting. Earth's special forces had long since mastered the art of jungle warfare. They had trained in environments exactly like this, knowing every inch of the terrain and every sound the jungle made. They had fought and survived in conditions that would break most soldiers. Now, they were preparing to fight not just for their lives, but for the survival of their planet. As the Galactic Armies moved deeper into the jungle, they were watched by eyes that knew every inch of the terrain. The humans blended into the environment, using the jungle as both a shield and a weapon. They moved silently, hidden among the trees, their faces painted with the earth, their weapons loaded and ready. And then, the first strike came. A silent, precise shot from the tree line took out one of the alien commanders. Panic spread quickly through the ranks. The aliens, unused to this kind of warfare, fired wildly into the jungle, but they hit nothing. The humans had already moved, slipping away into the dense undergrowth, leaving the invaders confused and terrified. The Galactic Armies had expected to face an enemy with inferior technology, not realizing that they were up against soldiers who didn't need advanced weapons to win. The humans had the advantage of terrain, experience, and the will to fight for their home. The jungle was their ally, a living fortress that swallowed up the invaders and made their superior technology useless. In the days that followed, the jungle itself seemed to rise against the aliens. Every step they took was watched, every path they chose was a trap. The special forces hit them with guerrilla tactics, striking quickly and then disappearing into the jungle before the aliens could react. Their technology was worthless in the face of an enemy who knew the land better than they ever could. The once proud galactic armies, who had mocked Earth's wilderness, found themselves trapped in a place that their technology couldn't conquer. They had underestimated the planet, and they were paying the price. Earth, the forgotten world, was now a battlefield, and the jungle, which they had laughed at, was becoming their graveyard. The galactic armies, confused and frustrated, had no choice but to push deeper into the jungle. They couldn't retreat, not after their leaders had made such bold claims of an easy victory. They believed their technology would eventually win out. But as their equipment continued to fail and their soldiers began to falter, the truth became undeniable: they were out of their element. What they failed to understand was that the jungle wasn't just an obstacle, it was the battlefield itself. The terrain they dismissed was being turned into a weapon by the very forces they'd belittled. Earth's special forces, experts in guerrilla warfare, knew that in the jungle, victory wasn't about firepower or superior technology, it was about patience, precision, and knowing how to make the environment work for you. For years, Earth's special forces had trained in conditions just like this. They had honed their skills in some of the planet's most unforgiving terrains, and the jungle was their home turf. Every vine, every tree, every hidden pathway was an advantage to them, and they knew how to exploit it. The galactic armies had brought drones, sensors, and hovercrafts, but none of that mattered now. In the jungle, their machines were just dead weight, their sensors blind. The humans, on the other hand, moved like shadows through the dense foliage. They knew how to navigate the thick undergrowth without making a sound, how to use the natural cover of the trees to hide from sight, and how to strike without warning. Every step the aliens took was a misstep, and every moment they lingered in the jungle only brought them closer to defeat. For the special forces, the jungle was an extension of their own tactics, turning every branch and leaf into a potential ally. The alien soldiers, despite their superior numbers and equipment, found themselves lost, disoriented, and slowly being picked off one by one. The humans didn't need to confront them head-on, they just needed to wait. They knew the jungle would do the rest. The humidity and heat were already taking their toll on the invaders. Their armor, designed for more temperate environments, became a burden, trapping heat and making movement slow and cumbersome. Their advanced weapons, which had worked flawlessly on other planets, began to malfunction in the thick air, leaving them vulnerable. Earth's special forces understood the psychological impact of their tactics. They didn't just want to defeat the invaders, they wanted to break them. Every strike was calculated, not just to kill, but to spread fear. The aliens began to dread the sounds of the jungle, the rustling leaves, the unseen movements. Every noise could be the humans closing in, and every shadow could hide an ambush. The galactic armies had never faced an enemy like this. Their training was built around large-scale battles in open environments where superior technology and numbers could overwhelm any opponent. But here, in the heart of the jungle, their strategies were worthless. Their soldiers weren't just fighting humans, they were fighting the jungle itself, and it was a battle they couldn't win. In one particularly devastating encounter, a squad of alien soldiers, heavily armed and supported by drones, moved cautiously through a narrow pathway. They believed their scanners were sweeping the area for any human presence. But the jungle had long since rendered their technology useless. The humans had already surrounded them, hidden in the trees, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. With quiet precision, the Special Forces soldiers launched their attack. It was over in seconds. The aliens never even saw their attackers. When it was done, the humans disappeared back into the jungle, leaving behind only confusion and terror. The remaining alien troops, hearing the reports, became even more cautious, but it didn't matter. They were no longer the hunters, they were the prey. The more the galactic armies pushed forward, the more they realized how badly they had miscalculated. Their attempts to cut through the jungle were futile. Their heavy equipment, designed for open battlefields, was useless here. The jungle swallowed their machines, buried their vehicles in mud, and tangled their drones in vines. The humans had no such problems. Their weapons were simple but effective, and their tactics were designed specifically for environments like this. As the days dragged on, the alien forces found themselves exhausted, both physically and mentally. Every attempt to advance was met with swift resistance from the humans, and every failed attempt to locate them left the aliens more frustrated and afraid. The jungle, which had seemed so insignificant before, was now their greatest enemy. It shielded the humans and punished the invaders for their arrogance. It wasn't just the human skill that made them formidable, it was their connection to the environment. The Galactic Armies had come to Earth believing that their technology would be enough to secure victory, but Earth was unlike any other planet they had faced. Its wilderness wasn't a weakness, it was a fortress, and its defenders knew how to use it. Every trap, every ambush, was meticulously planned, and every time the aliens lost soldiers, their morale sank further. The special forces didn't need to destroy the entire invasion force, they just needed to make them realize they couldn't win. They struck when necessary, but more importantly, they waited. The jungle would take care of the rest. Disease began to spread through the alien ranks as the heat and humidity weakened them. Their food supplies dwindled, and their communication systems, designed for different climates, began to fail entirely. The jungle was turning their own technology against them. Earth's special forces, watching from the shadows, knew they had the upper hand. The invaders were lost, their confidence shattered. What had started as an easy conquest was now a nightmare. The jungle had humbled the galactic armies, and the humans, once mocked for their primitive ways, had proven that sometimes survival wasn't about having the most advanced tools, it was about knowing how to fight where no one else could. As the days wore on, the galactic armies found themselves in an unfamiliar position, vulnerable. Their soldiers, once confident in their advanced armor and weaponry, were now desperate, fatigued, and broken. The jungle, which they had arrogantly dismissed, had become a constant tormentor. It wasn't just the humans who were fighting them, it was the very land they walked on, the air they breathed, and the sounds that echoed through the dense trees. Every step deeper into the jungle felt like a step closer to their demise. The human special forces had perfected the art of psychological warfare. Their strikes weren't just about inflicting casualties, they were about sowing fear and uncertainty. The alien soldiers began to dread the nights, where the darkness enveloped them and the jungle seemed to come alive. The occasional rustle of leaves, the distant call of an animal, the snap of a twig, it was enough to send their nerves into a spiral of paranoia. Every sound, every shadow, held the threat of an invisible human force lying in wait. They had never fought an enemy like this. On every other planet, victory had been swift, achieved through overwhelming firepower and superior technology. Here, in the heart of Earth's wilderness, those advantages were meaningless. The humans knew the terrain intimately, and more importantly, they knew how to make the aliens doubt themselves. A squad would disappear into the jungle, and when their bodies were found days later, it would be without a single clue as to what had happened. The invaders' confidence, once unshakable, crumbled with each loss. Earth's special forces took no unnecessary risks. They didn't need to. The jungle was doing much of the work for them. The alien soldiers, completely unprepared for the conditions, were breaking down, mentally and physically. The humidity, the biting insects, the heat, and the endless rain were relentless. The advanced armor the invaders wore, which had been designed to withstand laser blasts and atmospheric hazards, became a liability. Trapped inside their suits, the aliens were suffocating, their equipment overheating in the oppressive climate. For the humans, the jungle was an ally. Their light gear and decades of training allowed them to move quickly, strike silently, and vanish without a trace. The aliens, on the other hand, were burdened by their own technology. Their drones, once thought to be the ultimate advantage, became useless as they lost signal in the thick canopy. The human soldiers had no such issues, they needed no machines to guide them. They had lived in these conditions, they had trained for this exact kind of warfare, and they knew how to survive where the aliens were failing. The Galactic Army's command structure was starting to fall apart. Their leaders, unable to communicate with many of their scattered units, were left guessing as to where their soldiers even were. More concerningly, their soldiers had lost the will to fight. The constant threat of unseen ambushes had shattered their morale. Every patrol ended the same way, with fewer soldiers returning than had set out, and no answers as to why. In the middle of the chaos, a single question echoed among the remaining alien troops: how had they been so wrong? How had they, with all their technological superiority, been brought to their knees by a species they had considered primitive? It wasn't just the jungle that was defeating them, it was the humans themselves. Earth's special forces had a deep understanding of how to exploit fear, how to manipulate the battlefield, and how to break an enemy without needing to engage them directly. The realization hit the aliens hard. Their technology had limits, and those limits were painfully clear now. No matter how advanced their weapons were, they were useless if they couldn't be deployed. No matter how sophisticated their drones were, they were blind in this environment. Earth's special forces didn't rely on technology the same way, they relied on skill, experience, and patience. In the end, that was all they needed. The alien leaders, growing desperate, ordered their forces to regroup and make one final push through the jungle. But by now, their troops were too far gone. Exhausted, demoralized, and terrified of what lay ahead, they moved slowly and cautiously, always looking over their shoulders. They had come to Earth expecting to dominate, but now they were simply trying to survive. Every step forward felt like another step into a trap. And the traps were there, always waiting, always deadly. The humans didn't need numbers. They didn't need the latest weapons. What they had was far more valuable: the ability to use their environment to its fullest. A squad of alien soldiers could be eliminated without a single human being seen. Mines buried in the undergrowth, snares hidden in the brush, and sudden, silent attacks in the dead of night were all it took to whittle down the invaders' numbers. The galactic armies were slowly bleeding out, losing soldiers, equipment, and hope with each passing day. The few surviving alien commanders began to see the writing on the wall. Their once grand invasion had become a disaster, and they had underestimated the humans from the very beginning. They had assumed that Earth was just another planet, its people just another weak species to conquer. But the humans were different. They weren't fighting for resources, for territory, or for power, they were fighting for their home. And that made them far more dangerous than the aliens could have ever imagined. The galactic armies, for all their advanced technology, were losing to an enemy that knew how to turn every disadvantage into a strength. The jungle, once a laughingstock among the aliens, was now the reason they were facing total defeat. Their soldiers were demoralized, their supplies were running low, and the humans showed no signs of letting up. For the first time in the history of the galactic armies, they were on the brink of a complete and utter loss, not because their enemy was stronger, but because their enemy was smarter, more resilient, and more determined. The human special forces, watching from the shadows, knew they had already won. They didn't need to launch a final assault. The galactic armies were crumbling from within, their soldiers too scared to fight, their leaders too disconnected to lead. The jungle had done its job, and the humans had played their part perfectly. The aliens were retreating, no longer the invincible force they once believed themselves to be. They had mocked Earth's wilderness, but now they were learning the hard way that underestimating a determined and adaptable foe was their greatest mistake. The alien forces, battered and demoralized, now moved more cautiously than ever. Their arrogance had been stripped away, replaced by fear and confusion. They no longer believed they were the superior species, they were now just trying to survive. Every step they took felt like they were walking into another trap, and the jungle had proven to be an enemy they could neither predict nor conquer. The final push was supposed to be a show of strength, but it had already begun to falter. The Galactic Army's leadership, scattered and unsure, issued orders that seemed more like desperate attempts to regain control rather than any true strategic moves. The remaining alien soldiers, barely holding on, were tasked with regrouping for a last-ditch assault through one of the most impenetrable sections of the jungle. The humans, ever patient, knew exactly what was coming. They had anticipated this moment, having studied the aliens' every move. Earth's special forces had allowed the aliens to move deeper into the jungle, drawing them into terrain where their technology was utterly useless. The humans didn't need overwhelming firepower or massive numbers. They had already turned the jungle into their strongest ally. When the Galactic Armies began their final advance, they walked straight into the perfect ambush. The humans had prepared the terrain meticulously, using natural barriers and carefully hidden traps. The jungle, thick with vines and foliage, provided all the cover they needed. The moment the alien forces stepped into the kill zone, the humans struck with deadly precision. It wasn't a battle, it was a dismantling. The alien forces, already weakened by weeks of stress, fear, and attrition, couldn't even mount a proper defense. They were outflanked at every turn, their heavy machinery unable to maneuver in the thick underbrush. Their advanced weapons failed them once again, jamming in the humidity or misfiring as they panicked. The humans, on the other hand, were calm and efficient, taking down their targets and vanishing before the aliens could even identify where the shots had come from. In the span of just a few hours, the final remnants of the once mighty galactic armies were either captured or dead. Their leaders, still hiding behind their command posts miles away from the front lines, had no idea what had just happened. Reports of complete failures trickled in, and soon, the reality was undeniable. Earth, the planet they had ridiculed, had utterly humiliated them. The jungle, which the galactic armies had mocked from the beginning, had become their downfall. The aliens had never understood that Earth's wilderness wasn't just a primitive landscape, it was a fortress, and its defenders had used it to perfection. The special forces had outwitted, outmaneuvered, and outlasted the invaders, exploiting their arrogance and their dependence on technology at every turn. As the few surviving alien soldiers retreated, they left behind not just their dead, but their pride. The galactic armies, known for their ruthless efficiency and dominance, had been beaten on a planet they considered insignificant. It was a defeat that would echo across the galaxy, shaking the foundations of their alliance and forcing them to reconsider their entire approach to warfare. They had assumed that brute force and superior technology were enough to subdue any species, but Earth had proven them wrong. The jungle was silent again, but it carried with it the weight of victory. The humans had fought not just for survival, but for their home. They had used every ounce of their training, knowledge, and experience to turn what the aliens saw as a weakness into their greatest strength. The jungle had swallowed the galactic armies, not with brute force, but with patience, strategy, and an intimate understanding of the land. Earth's special forces watched from the shadows as the remaining alien forces fled. There was no need for celebration, they had done what they had trained to do. The jungle was their domain, and they had defended it with the quiet efficiency they were known for. Their victory wasn't just a testament to their skill, but to their connection to the planet itself. The galactic armies had never stood a chance, not once they entered the wilderness that the humans called home. As the last of the alien ships disappeared into the sky, the message was clear: Earth was not a planet to be conquered. Its people, hardened by centuries of conflict and survival, were more formidable than any advanced technology could have predicted. The jungle, once ridiculed, was now respected as one of the most dangerous battlefields in the galaxy. The galactic armies, though defeated, would never forget what had happened on Earth. They had come seeking resources, thinking that Earth's wilderness was a weakness, only to find that it was their arrogance that had been the greatest weakness of all. The special forces had shown them that true strength doesn't come from advanced machines or superior firepower, but from understanding the battlefield and knowing how to use it to your advantage. The galaxy would now see Earth differently. No longer just a backwater planet on the fringes of civilization, Earth had proven that it was capable of defending itself against even the most advanced invaders. The Galactic Army's defeat would be a story told throughout the stars, a cautionary tale about the dangers of underestimating an enemy who knows the land better than you ever could. For the humans, this was just another chapter in their long history of survival. They didn't need the galaxy's recognition. They had done what needed to be done, defending their home from those who thought they could take it. The jungle had been their greatest ally, and they had used it to protect what was theirs. As the special forces disappeared back into the wilderness, blending seamlessly with the trees and shadows, they knew one thing for certain: Earth had earned its place in the galaxy, not through conquest, but through the simple fact that no one would dare underestimate it again. The jungle had spoken, and its message was clear: Earth and its people were not to be trifled with.